Hey everyone, welcome back to more Reddit stories about entitled people, insane people, and all that kind of stuff. It's time to read about some more seriously unhinged people, so let's get into it. Boss yells at me for following instructions and tells me to do the opposite next time, which backfires. About 20 years ago, I used to work as an office assistant at a small company, where we would receive orders from clients and then we would assign the work to one of our freelancers, who were well compensated and respectable professionals. My boss was such a professional herself, and when possible, we would assign that work to her. I accepted the minimum wage job because she told me I could sometimes get tasks assigned as a freelancer, with a nice freelancer compensation, that she would personally train me, and that in less than a year I would most likely be promoted to a regular freelancer and make very good money. This sounded like a great career path to my young and naive ears. One of the things she had told me in the very beginning was that when you take over an order, you become like a project manager for that order. You need to make sure that the freelancer would finish the work on time, as the work was usually time sensitive. Additionally, she loved going on long lectures about how she is paying me minimum wage for me to use my brain and figure things out when necessary. These lectures were mainly a vehicle for her to stroke her own ego by explaining to her employees how our brains were not as smart as hers. One day our biggest corporate client had placed a large order that was due on a Monday by noon, and we had assigned the task to my boss to do over the weekend. It was Monday morning, time was ticking, and my boss hadn't arrived at the office. The client had called to see if we were going to provide the work soon, as it was urgent. I tried calling my boss, who didn't pick up her mobile. I called half an hour later and texted her. No answer or reply while noon was fast approaching. So I called her landline at home. Her husband picked up, told me she wasn't home, and I explained very briefly why I was trying to get a hold of her. Less than an hour before noon, my boss called, furious that I had been so insistent on getting a hold of her, and that I had created a state of stress and emergency at her house. Her home number was for emergencies only, and this wasn't an emergency. It's not professional to call people when they are not at work. She told me she got everything under control and she was now sending the work to the client directly. When she arrived at the office, she gave me a big scolding in person, and told me that I do need to hound other freelancers, but not her. It was her business, and she got everything handled. She knew all the clients, and they were clients because of her. She looked me in the eye and told me, "If I take over a task, it's not your task anymore, it's my task. You don't need to bother me with reminders. You just give me instructions from the client and I'll handle everything myself. From that point on, your job is done. I never ever miss deadlines. If the client calls, you tell them I'm on it and don't call me or text me about it." Fair enough. I apologized for the stress and repeated the new instructions back to her for confirmation. She was very happy with that and confirmed I had understood everything. She once more gave me her favorite lecture about how she is paying me minimum wage for me to use my brain, with a lot of condescending examples of how she always uses her brain, unlike us normal workers. I could only nod along, as if her narcissistic rant was actually teaching anybody anything. About a month or so later, another client comes in with an order. I accepted it. My boss was available to handle it, so I forwarded everything to her and considered my work in regard to that order done as instructed. On the day of the deadline, I was on vacation and was hiking in a remote area with spotty cell coverage. The other office assistant called me and told me the client had called the office to check if the work was ready. I told my colleague that our boss was on it and that we didn't need to worry, as our boss was going to handle it, and that my clear instructions were to tell the client our boss was personally on it. The task would be done by the deadline, and explicitly not to call our boss to remind her of the deadline. Then, since I was on vacation, I needed to conserve my battery and everything at the office was handled, I switched off my phone. An approaching deadline my boss said to me was explicitly not an emergency. Also, I had recently realized that my boss had knowingly misled me about the career opportunities this job was affording me, so I wasn't going to be on call on my rare day off. While I was hiking without a care in the world, my boss had managed to forget about the deadline. By the time she realized she had missed it, the office was closed. My boss had urgently finished the work, but it turned out she didn't know the clients so well, as she didn't have their contact details. As the order was in the office and my phone was off, she had to go there herself, fetch it, and use the contact details to deliver the work late. This was particularly embarrassing, as my colleague had informed the client our boss was personally doing the work for them. When I came back to work, it was pandemonium. She screamed at me, but I simply pointed out that everything I had done was following her instructions. Why did you do this? You told me to. Why didn't you do that? You told me not to. She was fuming, but she knew I was correct and I had acted exactly as instructed. She also screamed at me for my phone being off, but I said I needed to conserve my battery for emergencies, and this was clearly not an emergency and I'm not on call while on vacation anyway. Malicious compliance for the win, right? Well, narcissists never accept blame, and she had an idea of how to shift the blame to me after all. But you didn't provide me with the client's contact details with the order assignment. How could I have delivered them the work? It was your fault for not providing me with all the information. I pointed out that she told me she knew all the clients personally, but if she had used her brain like she is constantly telling us to, she could have easily noticed that the order instructions were on the client's letterhead with all their contact details spelled out, on every single page, bottom and top. Now that was a huge slap to her fragile ego, and remembering her face in that moment still makes me smile. Needless to say, I was fired. Of course, I didn't mind. Don't you just love happy endings? Neighbor saw me naked through my window and called the police. Cannot stop thinking about it. Location: Orange County, California. A few nights ago, late at night, I was doing laundry in my room and had my window open. It was a bit warm. I live on the 4th floor of my building and the window to my room is facing the street and neighborhood, but it's quite high and you can only really see the ceiling from the street unless I'm standing right next to it. Anyways, I had my phone propped against my window screen so I could watch YouTube while folding some of my shirts. Important later. I had a lot of clothes on the floor, and at one point got up onto my bed to stop stepping on things and continued tending to my laundry there. I was so in the zone that I very stupidly took my clothes off so that I could throw those in the wash. When standing on my bed, I am likely visible from a high enough angle, like if someone in a higher apartment looked out their window. But I was on there for maybe a minute before throwing those in the wash and putting on fresh clothes. However, apparently, one of my neighbors saw me do this from their window and recorded a video of me, then called the police. In one of the most embarrassing and frightening encounters I've had, they came to my door and asked if I have a window that faced that direction. I said yes, and they informed me that some of my neighbors had a concern about me being naked in front of the window, and that I was recording people on my phone. I informed the officers that I was doing laundry and watching videos on my phone, and profusely apologized. I also asked if the family would like me to apologize directly, but they said we should be good. The officer also said, "What you're doing isn't technically illegal, but," and informed me to be more careful, noting that the family said their daughter had apparently seen me. The other officer also said, "We aren't here to get you in trouble." I have no idea if they were telling the truth or just saying that. The encounter ended when they asked for my name, number, and if I had any previous citations. They told me to close my blinds and not do laundry on the bed, obviously, then left. I have not heard from anyone since, and this was on Sunday night, posting this on Thursday. My blinds have been pulled shut tightly since the incident, and I am deeply embarrassed. However, I can't stop anxiously thinking about coming home to a charge or being arrested randomly for indecent exposure, which would ruin my life. I also feel gross about someone recording me naked in my home and calling the police on me. I get why they did that, if they felt they needed proof, but I feel extremely violated by that, even though I know I was being incredibly stupid and careless. I truly did not even think about my window being open. Anyways, should I consult a lawyer? Should I be concerned about a warrant being issued for my arrest? How likely is it that the police will charge me? Does this sound like just a warning or the start of an investigation? Is there anything I can do about the video? I would prefer not to have someone I don't know possessing a video of me naked. An OP did post this in the legal advice subreddit, and here's what a couple commenters said. "Cop here. You're good. They have done something the first time they were out there. Also, any charges regarding the legality of your actions opens a whole can of worms. If you can't be naked in your own home, where can you be naked?" And another commenter responds to that, saying, "I'm also a cop and have worked these cases. The above poster is 100% correct. We would have to have proof that you were exposing yourself to others for sexual gratification to charge you with anything. There is no evidence of that. This matter is closed." And following that, another commenter also points out, "I work in law enforcement as well, and he is not 100% correct. We keep chronos on these calls in case it's repeated behavior." And interestingly, this commenter here also said, not a lawyer and not in California, but there was a case in Denver in 2018 where a United Airlines pilot was arrested and suspended from work after someone reported them being naked inside a hotel room. The city of Denver actually ended up paying the pilot $300,000 in damages when a judge agreed that the police had violated his rights. And this is the picture that someone took of this pilot through their hotel room window, which resulted in this.
Denver police, sir, open the door. Sir, we're coming in with or without your permission, so open the door. Sir, you're under arrest. Okay, for what? Indecent exposure? Really? Yes, sir.
Seems that the cop really jumped the gun here with arresting him. It's interesting that the state ended up paying him $300K in damages after ruling it an unlawful arrest. It kinda just goes to show that this type of thing is a bit more complicated than you'd expect, and for these types of charges to actually be made, you'd really need to have proof that they had bad intentions, depending on the state and location, of course. It seems that simply being naked inside your home and being visible through a window is not enough to be charged with something, and there is a bit more to it than that. Arresting my boyfriend's brother during a traffic stop. I, 29 female, am a police officer and I take my job seriously. I worked my ass off to get here and I don't play favorites, even when it comes to people I know. A few nights ago I was on duty when I pulled over a car for running a red light and swerving. When I walked up to the driver's side, my stomach dropped. It was my boyfriend's brother, Sam, 22. I kept it professional and asked for his license and registration. The minute he recognized me, he laughed and said, "Oh, come on, Lucy, you're not seriously gonna give me a ticket, are you?" Then I smelled the alcohol. I knew from before that he tends to drink and drive. I asked him if he had been drinking and he shrugged, saying he only had a couple beers. I had him step out and do a sobriety test, which he failed. He had a lot of alcohol in him. At this point, I had no choice but to arrest him for DUI. He flipped out, calling me a traitor and saying that I was choosing my job over family. He even tried to guilt trip me by saying that if I called it in, it would ruin his life. I didn't back down. He got booked, and my boyfriend, Liam, 29, was furious when he found out. He called me, saying, "You really couldn't just let him go? He wasn't hurting anyone." I told him that Sam was a danger to himself and others. He was really drunk, and that I wasn't about to risk someone's life just because he's family. Liam is still pissed. Sam won't talk to me, and I don't know what to do. I think that if one of my colleagues had pulled him over instead of me, they would have done the exact same thing. And honestly, maybe this is the wake-up call he needs to smarten up before something worse happens. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for today. Thank you for watching. As always, I do appreciate it. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit that like button, drop a comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. So take care, stay tuned for more, and I'll see you in the next one.